Good morning, everyone. My name is Teresa Sutphin, and I work here for the Area Agency on Aging and Disability. I want to welcome you to our third installment of our virtual educational series. We have more than 55 people registered today for this session, which includes people from across the state from the Area Agencies on Aging and Disabilities. I'm going to now introduce Tracy Kendall. She is Alzheimer's Tennessee is the sponsor for today's session. Thank you, Tracy, for sponsoring our educational session. Tracy has over 22 years of experience working specifically in the realms of aging and Alzheimer's disease and related disorders. She has co-authored several manuscripts related to dementia and agitation reduction, which has been published in the Journal of Geriatrics and Gerontology. Tracy has conducted thousands of educational programs and trainings for both professional and lay care partners, equipping them with increased knowledge and power to effectively boost quality of life for those living with dementia while reducing care partner stress and burden. Tracy also has been selected to meet with all family medicine residents through East Tennessee State University, Quillen College of Medicine, making sure they are aware of care partner burden and dementia state, allowing them to serve as a stronger resource for their patients. She implemented the nation's fourth SPARK program, which focuses on cultural and social interactions for those living in mild to moderate stage dementia, as well as their care partners. Tracy's grandmother was her first experience with Alzheimer's disease and remains fuel for her passion to make a difference in the lives on a daily basis. Now I'd like to introduce Tracy and let her say a few words.
Good morning. Thank you so much, Teresa. I'm very excited to be here with you all today. And hopefully everyone on the call, the Zoom, is very familiar with Alzheimer's Tennessee. But just in case you're not, we want to definitely take just a couple of minutes to introduce you to the organization and who may be in your area, as well as some of the additional ways that we can help. So Alzheimer's Tennessee is a 501c3 nonprofit organization that began in 1983 as a result of a group of family caregivers coming together in the Knoxville area and not having support, and realizing that with this disease, as other types of cognitive impairment and other issues in life as well, no one fights alone and no one should be alone. So we're very proud of that. Until 2011, we were part of the National Alzheimer's Association. But as you can see, in 2011, we returned to our independent status. So we are based in the state of Tennessee, a grassroots organization, and that way we ensure that the funding stays within the region that we're serving. Our mission is to serve those facing Alzheimer's disease and related dementias, to promote brain health through education, and champion global prevention and treatment efforts. We definitely subscribe to the TIPA SNO way of thinking, which is until there's a cure, there's care. We know that the cure will come, but until that time happens, we need to, professionals and lay family care partners need to be supported. Our next slide is the counties that we serve in Tennessee. So as you can see, all of them, and we're getting ready to meet your contact person in your area that would be more than happy to help you. So starting off on the west end of the state by the Great Mississippi River, we always say from Memphis to Mountain City. So starting in Memphis, Jackson actually, we have Miss Amanda Barlow Leach. And after the presentation, you can email Teresa or myself, and we can get you the contact information. Coming to our Nashville office, we have the wonderful Cheryl Blanchard. She is old to Alzheimer's Tennessee. She served in the Knoxville office and will be starting in the Nashville office next Monday. Coming down to the South Central region, Miss Fran Gray in the Tullahoma area. Cookeville, we have Miss Lynn Drew and Melanie Hendricks. And as I said before, hopefully you all are already working with all of these folks, but if you're not, make sure to reach out. Next is me. So we cover Northeast Tennessee and Southwest Virginia out of our Johnson City office. And we'll back up just a little bit to our home office or the hub on Kingston Pike in Knoxville. If you all are driving through there this Friday, Saturday, and I believe Sunday, you will see painters out front. We had a gift and the individual wanted us to repaint the purple on our building. So we're the only purple building on Kingston Pike. Of course, our telephone helpline is probably still the most engaging form that we have. It's the first point of contact, like the Area Agency on Aging and Disabilities being the seamless point of entry. You could tell I've done this a year or two. Alzheimer's Tennessee is there for families as well, 24/7. We've tried to make our number very memorable and very easy to remember. So it's 1-800-ALS-GATE. In the thought process that we're the gateway for services to their family members. We are especially proud of a couple of these programs and services that we've begun over the past 5 years. One is the Live Well Academy, and that is guided and directed. This is probably the most important part to me, as well as our president and CEO. It's guided and directed by individuals living with cognitive impairment. So it's not us thinking we know what may be best or what may be best helpful for them. It's those individuals. So we have a group of about 15 individuals in the across the state that guide and direct those programs. And the underlying message is a diagnosis is not a death sentence. There's a lot of wonderful golden moments that can still happen. And sometimes you need friends beside of you to make sure you realize what those are and keep us focused. Our Caregiver Academy online, very short videos. We know that people may not have time to come to a 1 hour, 2 hour, sometimes 6 hour educational conference. So these videos are typically less than 5 minutes and gear specifically toward those most asked questions. So what is the difference between Alzheimer's and dementia? I have a diagnosis now. What do I do? Where do I go? How do I help my loved one with personal care? All of those answers can be found on that academy. And last but not least, we have a lot of services, and if you all work with us, you know that, but Memory Cafe is something that has grown by leaps and bounds, believe it or not, during the pandemic, because most of them went online, and that kind of broke down that barrier where people may have been afraid or concerned about coming out in a public place with a group of people. That our memory cafes have grown monumentally. And incidentally, all of the services, such as the 4 weekly support groups, our memory cafes that are online, those will be resuming in person, but the online component won't go away. We have some people that like them too much, so we won't do that. I mentioned our support groups. We have 4 weekly online. They can also be done telephonically, and all of that information is there. Training. So if you are with an agency, you are with a long-term care community, an assisted living, an in-home non-medical agency. I know we have folks from all walks of professional life on the meeting with us today. We have a training that can be catered specifically to you, from a 15-minute, which is hard for people that know me, 15-minute general presentation to a 6-hour to 8-hour staff and service training. So please reach out to us as far as that goes as well. Advocacy, I know I'm running short on my time, but I did want to thank you all, specifically the area agencies on aging and disabilities, the Tennessee Commission on Aging, for helping Alzheimer's Tennessee this year with reintroducing the Silver Alert legislation. It did pass, and as a result, you have begun. It doesn't officially go into effect until July 1. However, you've probably seen more Silver Alerts issued because the majority of departments have already come on board with that and are more uniform across the 95 counties, and that's due to efforts of yours. So thank you very much for that. We always have I hate to use the word fight. it connotates negativity, but we always have a fight to fight, and we always need additional strong advocates. So please consider joining us. And that is it. So as promised, I probably went a little over 2 minutes, but honestly, the last thing I want to leave you with, as Teresa mentioned, my grandmother had senility. She was diagnosed with that in the late 70s, early 80s. Since then, having 4 additional family members that have been diagnosed with another type of cognitive impairment. We are here for you. All you have to do is reach out. And sometimes that means you reach out and you don't know what you're reaching out for. We try to help you with that. Have a good day. And I know the presentation that's upcoming is going to be wonderful. So we look forward to working with all of you soon. Have a good day.
Thank you, Tracy. Now I have the privilege of introducing our speaker today. Her name is Michele McRoy. She's the security officer for Bank of Tennessee. She is originally from Eastern North Carolina and worked at a large financial institution for 50 years before moving to Kingsport in 2006. She received her Certified Financial Services Security Professional certification in 2013 and her Certified Fraud Examiner certification in 2018. Her job primarily deals with fiscal security and fraud. Although she works with many different types of fraud, she is particularly passionate about protecting the bank's elderly customers from financial exploitation. She and her husband, Paul, have lived in Kingsport for 13 years. They have 2 daughters who live in Knoxville. Welcome, Michele, and I'm going to turn the presentation over to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Teresa, for that introduction. And thank you, Tracy and Alzheimer's Tennessee, for sponsoring this event. Again, my name is Michele McRoy, and I'm a security officer with Bank of Tennessee. My presentation today is elder financial exploitation from a financial institution perspective. Some things that I will cover today: what is financial exploitation and how is it perpetrated? Who is at risk? What do financial institutions look for? And then at the end, I'll have some resources for you in case you are looking for additional information. So before I start my presentation, I thought we would begin with a few polling questions to see what you all know about elder financial exploitation. So Dale, if you can cue those up. Do I need to share my screen first?
Michele, the poll's
Yes.
going on right now.
Oh, it is. Okay. I'm not seeing it, so I will read it. Okay. So the first question is, which is a sign of elder financial abuse? Is it new authorized signers on a person's account or changes in beneficiaries? Bank withdrawals that are inconsistent with an older person's typical bank activity? Caregiver, relative, or friend sharing an excessive interest in an older person's finances or assets, or all of the above? So if you can submit your answer.
So the results were all of the above. 95% chose that.
Well, that
5%
is the
chose someone showing excessive interest in elders' finances and assets.
Okay. Well, that definitely is one, but the correct answer was all of the above. So very good. Okay. So the next question. What percentage of financial abuse in the U.S. is committed by family members, caregivers, and friends? Is it 29%, 33%, 55%, or 72%?
Okay, the results are in. 3% chose 33%, 7% chose 55, and 90% chose 72.
Oh, okay. Well, honestly, I would have chosen 72 also, but the correct answer is 55%. Seniors lose at least $2.6 billion annually to financial exploitation, and 55% of financial abuse in the U.S. is committed by family members, caregivers, and friends. So yeah, that would kind of surprise me. Okay, so the next question. Which of the following does not describe the profile of a financial elder abuse victim? Is it someone close to an elder that runs up their bills and damages their credit rating? The friend or relative of an elder who enriches themselves at the elder's expense? Family or friends that dip into an elder's wallet and never pay the money back? Or an elder who is unrelenting, unwilling to lend money or to spend money on someone else, or is bossy?
Okay, so here are the results. 4% chose someone close to elder runs their bills up. 4% chose friend relative of elders enriched at elder's expense. 4% chose family friends dip into elder's wallet, never pay back. And 89% said elder is unrelenting, unwilling to lend the dollars, is bossy.
Yes. Okay. Well, and that is the correct answer. The last one. So the classic financial victim falls into one of several categories, and a common theme among those victim types is that they are swindled out of money from friends and relatives and they never get the money back. So very good. Okay. So the next question. Many cities have agencies to help meet the basic needs of older citizens. Who can you contact to find out the nearest agency to you or your loved one? Is it the National Association of Area Agencies on Aging, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, the Administration on Aging, or the City League of Aging Agencies?
So the results on that one is 72% chose National Association of Area Agencies on Aging, 10% Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, 17% Administration on Aging, and 0% City League of Aging Agencies.
Okay, you all are good. So the correct answer is the first one, the National Association of Area Agencies on Aging. Most cities have agencies that help meet the basic needs of our older citizens, and there are more than 600 area agencies on aging, which help older adults and family members find the homes, community-based services, and living arrangements that best suit them. So very good. Okay, we have a couple more. The next question. What legal document do you need if you're going to act as an aging individual's financial agent so that you can carry out their financial directions? Is it a will, a power of attorney, a handwritten note, or an endorsed check?
Okay, so the results on that 100% chose power of attorney.
Woo! Yes, yes, absolutely. So our power of attorney is a legal document signed by a loved one, which authorizes them to handle business and legal transactions on an elder's behalf. And there's no such thing as a standard POA. This legal document is tailored to an individual's specific situation. So very good. And the last question is, if you are not in charge of your family's finances, what question should you ask your spouse to make sure you are an informed partner? Is it, how do we handle existing investments? What is your annual income and how much does it cost to live? Where do we store all financial documents? Or all of the above?
Okay, so the results on that is 100% chose all of the above.
Very good. That is correct. Family money is everyone's business. Mistakes can permanently change your life, so both partners need to have an understanding of finances. Make sure you're an informed partner and know the answers to the questions like the ones above. So very good. Okay. So I will begin my presentation. Show my screen. Is everyone seeing my screen?
Yes, they are.
Okay, great. Okay. Okay. So just an overview of elder financial exploitation. In 2017, the Tennessee General Assembly enacted Public Chapter 264, or Senate Bill 1267, which was titled the Elderly and Vulnerable Adult Financial Exploitation Prevention Act. That is a mouthful, but it's a wonderful thing. As part of this legislation, the Department of Financial Institutions has been working with banks, credit unions, and other agencies to promote awareness of the dangers that elderly and vulnerable adults face as a result of financial exploitation. Under this law, financial exploitation is defined as the unlawful appropriation or use of an elderly or vulnerable adult's property for one's own benefit or that of a third party. There's also the Tennessee Adult Protection Act, which defines exploitation as the improper use of a caretaker of funds that have been paid by a governmental agency to an adult or to a caretaker for the use or care of the adult. And while almost any adult is susceptible to exploitation, there are specific protections for adults 65 and older and persons with disabilities who cannot protect his or her own interests. We'll talk a little bit more about the Elderly and Vulnerable Adult Financial Exploitation Prevention Act a little later on. But lots of progress made in that area. So a few statistics. It's estimated that 1 in 10 adults over 60 have experienced some form of elder abuse. And it's also estimated that 1 in 5 Americans over the age of 65 have been victimized by financial fraud. On average, victims lose around $120,000. So how does financial exploitation occur? An older adult or a person with disabilities can be exploited in the following ways: without their knowledge or consent, by trickery, intimidation, coercion, or undue influence, by some type of cognitive impairment or confusion so that the person cannot give valid consent. And we have seen in our financial institution all of these situations, unfortunately. So who is at the most risk for financial exploitation? The following factors increase the risk of abuse with adults that are frail, ill, disabled, depressed, or lonely, adults who are physically or emotionally dependent upon others, adults who need help with their finances, or adults that have never managed their finances before, and adults who are confused or have dementia or some type of cognitive impairment. So the two main categories of elder financial exploitation are 1, financial exploitation committed by strangers, personal acquaintances, or professionals in positions of trust, such as attorneys or financial advisors. Financial exploitation committed by strangers generally involves deliberately deceiving a victim with the promise of goods, services, or other benefits that don't exist, are unnecessary, or are misrepresented or never intended to be provided. We see these in scams a lot with our elders, and the common ones that we see are home repair scams and paving scammers that demand payment for a job up front, and then they only do partial work, they don't finish the job, or they do shoddy work. We've seen this many times. And then the second category is financial exploitation committed by friends, relatives, and caregivers. So I have a couple of articles to illustrate this. These are ones in our area, in the state of Tennessee, that made the news over the last year or so. One was a Hawkins County man that was accused of stealing about $78,000 from his elderly aunt. He was arrested back in December of the end of December of 2020, with warrant charging him with financial exploitation of an elderly adult of more than $60,000. This man managed his aunt's savings, and he knowingly breached a fiduciary duty that resulted in an appropriation, sale, or transfer of her property. The victim, who was in her 80s and of sound mind, signed over her power of attorney to this man who was supposed to be paying her bills, including her nursing home payments. She was evicted from a nursing home because she wasn't paying the bill, because he wasn't paying the bill. The woman had been threatened with eviction a couple of times, and the man would always come up and pay the bill at the last minute. But then one time he didn't pay it, and she was evicted. She went to another nursing home, and the same thing happened there. And she was about to get evicted from that nursing home because he wasn't paying her bills there either, before Adult Protective Services stepped in and reported the crime, and before the second eviction could take place. The man wiped out all of his aunt's savings, but she still has a pension and Social Security, which is now what she's using to live on. And they were not able to determine what he spent his aunt's money on. The second one is a little more, it's a little, well, they're all bad. This one is a little more dollar-wise, but elder exploitation just the same. This was a happened in Middle Tennessee over several years, but I guess was just tried. And it was a Tennessee couple charged with defrauding an elderly widow of $1.7 million. It was a man and his wife. The man met an elderly widow while he was working as an exterminator for a pest control company, and he provided extermination services for her home for about 3 years, from 2016 till 2019. In about 2018, when this woman was 85 years old, and then it continued until about June of last year, he devised and executed a scheme to defraud the woman in various financial institutions and credit and loan issuing institutions by deceiving the woman into believing that he was her son or godson, and that he was going to care for her personally and financially. He then used his influence over her to convince her to sign over her power of attorney and to name him in her living trust and in her will. The man methodically drained the woman's bank accounts, took out a $500,000 line of credit in her name, using her securities as collateral, and amassed huge charges on her credit cards for his own personal expenses, all under the false pretenses that he had a valid POA and that he was entitled to her money and property, and that he was acting for her benefit and in her interest. In December of 2019, he took out a $500,000 line of credit in the woman's name, using her security accounts as collateral. He then wrote checks to himself, purchased cashier's checks, took out cash withdrawals, and transferred money out of the woman's bank account and into a bank account in the name of a company that he set up and controlled. In January of 2020, he used $170,000 of the money from the line of credit to purchase an ownership interest in his own name in another pest control business. And also he rented an apartment in the woman's name And by this time, the woman had been living in a rehab facility for almost 6 months. During the course of the scheme, he took approximately $1,240,000 from her accounts, frequently purchased luxury items, and spent between $1,000 and $1,500 a day on lottery tickets. In February 2019, the couple purchased a luxury SUV, Lexus SUV, using $21,000 of the criminal proceeds. And in January 2020, they bought a 4.3 carat diamond ring and also used proceeds of the fraud. The man liquidated 2 investment accounts of the woman's deceased sister in the amount of $246,000 and again used the money for his own benefit. And if convicted, he faces up to 20 years in prison and his wife faces up to 10 years. So just a few examples of ones that have made the news. Of course, there's lots of cases out there, but there are also, on the flip side of that, cases that are not reported for various reasons, and we'll talk a little bit about that later also. So what do financial institutions look for? These things may signal possible financial abuse, and they're things that we always try to be cognizant of. An increased volume of banking activity. If an elder keeps money in their account and when their Social Security comes in, they come in and take a few $100s out, and pretty much there's not a lot of activity other than that. And then we start seeing consistent withdrawals. That's a red flag. Large or frequent, again, frequent withdrawals, frequent ATM withdrawals, suspicious signatures on checks or other documents, and we do check signatures. Apparently, I mean, also when there are reasons to think that a signature on a check doesn't look like a signature that an older person would sign. We look at those a little more closely, compare them to signature cards and other checks that the elder has written. Other people's signatures on checks, deposits or withdrawal slips or applications, debit card or ACH transactions that don't fit the customer's normal spending pattern, such as PayPal, music downloads, online shopping. We had a customer who had 2 sons and she was exploited twice, once by each of her sons. And in the most recent incident, we noticed about $550 in Xbox purchases in a 1-month period coming out of her account. Obviously, that was a question because she probably wasn't playing video games. Requests to wire money internationally in increasing amounts or to a money transfer business, or local wires if that's not the customer's normal banking activity. If they usually write checks and then all of a sudden they start wiring money, that's even if it is within the US, that is a red flag. And basically any banking activity that is inconsistent with the customer's normal habits is something that we look closely at. And then also when customers question transactions, they're not aware of things that are on their account. So that is something that we look at also. Some examples, Mr. Jones suddenly starts withdrawing the same amount of cash on a regular basis when in the past he'd only made deposits and written checks. Mrs. Smith comes in with a niece to get a cashier's check when we know that she's an only child and she doesn't have any relatives. Mr. Lawson is shown up on the insufficient funds report twice in the last 2 weeks when he's been a customer of the bank for 20 years and has never overdrawn his account or bounced a check. Those are some things that obviously are red flags. So we also look at changes in or unusual behaviors. A vulnerable adult may be a victim of financial abuse if he or she is accompanied by someone that may or may not have his or her best interest at heart, such as a relative or caregiver with no means of support that takes an interest in the elder, a stranger, family member, or other person that seems to be bullying or coercing them, an acquaintance who appears interested in the customer's financial dealings, a recent or new acquaintance that moves in with the elder, or an individual that speaks on behalf of the elder, even though they're present. The customer that I just spoke of before with the Xbox purchases, the one that was exploited by both of her sons, the other son would come in by himself, and he would tell us that she was sick and couldn't come in. He'd want to get a new debit card or change the PIN on her existing debit card, things like that. Of course, we wouldn't do that. So then he'd bring her in and he would do all the talking for her, would not let her get a word in. So again, that's obviously something that we look at. This case started back several years with the first son, who I think was eventually charged with elder financial exploitation and served some time. Then about 2 years later, it started back up with the other son. And I think that case is still ongoing because she had accounts at another financial institution and they also reported elder financial exploitation. So, and then if an elder seems nervous or afraid of the person accompanying him or her, it's obviously a red flag. Other changes, if they seem confused or can't give plausible explanations about their finances, if they can't give reasonable explanations about what other people are doing or are going to do with their money, if they're concerned or confused about missing funds. We had another customer who had 2 daughters. She was being exploited by both of them, and they blamed each other for taking her money. But what made it a little more difficult was that the customer sometimes would say it was okay to give them money, and then other times she would question where the money went. She consistently came in with one of the daughters. We very rarely saw the other one, but the one that brought her in the majority of the time, we knew that there was cause for concern, and so we made it really difficult for the daughter to get money. This went on for about a year until the daughter finally convinced her mother to close her accounts and go to another bank, where I'm sure the abuse continued. Other changes are unusual behaviors. An elder unable to remember signing paperwork or making transactions. Someone that exhibits unreasonable distrust by accusing others of mismanaging their money, frequently forgetting questions that are asked or items necessary to do their banking business, like checkbooks and deposit slips. Someone that displays a noticeable change in their appearance, grooming, mood, or body language. Some scams that we see frequently that target our seniors, telemarketing and phone scams. Seniors make twice as many purchases over the phone as the national average. Scammers like this type of scam because there's no face-to-face interaction and there's no paper trail, so it's very easy, very hard to trace. And once a deal is made, the person's name is shared with similar crooks looking for easy targets, and many times the same person is defrauded repeatedly. Social Security spoofing calls. This is people claiming to be from the Social Security Administration. Victims may be threatened with arrest or legal action if they don't call a number or press an option in the message to address the issue. And sometimes scammers reverse the tactic, saying they want to help the person activate a suspended Social Security number. And oftentimes the Social Security hotline's number is spoofed in order to make it appear legitimate. Email and phishing scams. We see a lot of those. An elder receives an email appearing to be from a legitimate company or financial institution asking them to verify or update their personal information. It could be an email from the IRS about a tax refund. Sweepstakes and lottery fraud. We see this a lot too. A scammer informs a victim that they won a sweepstakes or lottery of some sort, and they need to pay to unlock the supposed prize. Often seniors will be sent a check to deposit into a bank account, knowing that while it shows up in the account immediately, it will take several days before the bogus check is rejected or returned. And then during that time, the scammer will quickly collect the money for supposed fees or taxes on the prize, which they pocket, while the victim has the prize money removed from his or her account as soon as the check bounces. Internet fraud. This occurs because of seniors being unfamiliar with the less visible aspects of browsing the web, such as firewalls and built-in virus protection. Pop-up browsers mimicking virus scanning software will trick victims into downloading a bogus antivirus program for a fee, or download an actual virus that opens up the information on their computer to scammers. Romance scams, probably one of the most common ones we see. It's a scam where criminals search dating sites, apps, chat rooms, and other social media networking sites looking for vulnerable targets, preying on an elder's loneliness and desire for companionship. We had a customer come in who said her fiance was an orthopedic surgeon in Syria, and she was wanting wiring instructions to send money to him to pay bills. And she said she met him through a mutual friend. This woman's husband passed away about 9 months before this incident, and the branch manager became suspicious about large wires that were out of character for her. We questioned the customer. It was told that her husband did business in other states as well as internationally, and she was paying these companies for work that they had done for him before his death. She continued to send multiple wires for various reasons and was even planning a trip to see a longtime friend of her and her husband's who lived in Nevada but was in Australia for heart surgery. So she said, this case involved multiple banks, law enforcement, and they were, the scammer was talking to her up until the day that she was to board the plane, but we convinced her at the very last minute not to go. She did not end up going, but all of this went on for several months, and she ended up losing over $150,000. The grandparent scam. This is a scammer posing as a grandchild who tells the victim that they have some unexpected financial problem, such as a car that's broken down, they're in jail, things like that, and they need money. Sometimes they'll ask them to send it Western Union or MoneyGram. So now what grandparent's going to let their grandkid sit in jail or on the side of the road? So that's a common one too. Fraudulent use of power of attorney. This is someone thinking that because they have a legitimate document that they can manage the elder's money in any way they see fit. And then COVID-19. Along with the grandparent, lottery, and romance scams, which have continued at an increased rate since the pandemic, other scams that emerged during this time, during COVID, were scams such as Medicare fraud. This was fraudsters posing as Medicare reps to get seniors to give out their personal information, like their Medicare ID number. Then they used this information to bill Medicare for fraudulent services, and then they pocketed the money. Counterfeit prescription drugs. Seniors turned to the internet as prescription drug prices increased, and fraudsters created fake websites that advertised cheap prescription drugs, which were also counterfeit. And then the funeral scheme. Fraudsters using obituaries to get information on a deceased person and then attempt to extort money from seniors. They claim the deceased has an outstanding debt that must be paid immediately. They prey on the elder's vulnerable state to get them to pay the fraudulent debt. Other scams, there was actually a really good article that I read several months ago, and it was on WATE, and it was an interview with Director Aaron Bradley, the Director of Area Agency on Aging, who said that when folks were laid off and businesses were shut down because of the coronavirus, that abusers turned to older relatives who had a steady income, Social Security or savings. And he also said that anytime there's a downturn in the economy, they see an increase in elder abuse cases, and that family members would go to their home because their relatives had a home, and that they take advantage of their funding because they had a steady income or a sizable savings. And I never really thought about that, but that is very good observation, and I'm sure that happens a lot. So what is our role? Our role is to identify those at risk, to protect account holders from fraud and take necessary action, to implement policies and procedures to protect our account holders, and to respond to all concerns and suspicions concerning financial exploitation and adults at risk. And finally, to report all suspicions to Adult Protective Services and or to our local law enforcement. So most states now have mandatory reporting statutes for elder abuse, and depending on the states, certain individuals are required to report. Tennessee is a mandatory reporting state, meaning that if you see or suspect abuse or neglect, you are required to report it to APS, and that includes everyone, not just financial institutions. So what can we do? We can get to know our elderly customers. This is not as easy in larger financial institutions, not to brag on ours, but I think we do a really good job of knowing our customers, particularly our elderly customers, knowing their financial habits. So if things seem out of the ordinary, they're really good about picking up on things. Asking questions. Being nosy in a nice way. If an elder comes in with someone that they've never seen before, they pick up cues that just maybe, you know, aren't just give them question for concern, cause for concern. Then they would ask the elder questions like what the relationship is to that person, if they're wanting to send money to someone, have they physically met this person? Questions like that. They're really good about asking questions to get more information. Explaining our role, letting our customers, elderly customers, know that our job is to protect them and their finances. Assess whether the elder understands the nature of the transaction. Again, asking questions. If wanting to withdraw a large amount of cash, suggesting that they get a cashier's check. A lot of times elders will come in and want a large amount of cash in cash. That is not a safe thing to do for anybody, but particularly for an older person. So we do try to get them to agree to take the money in a check rather than cash. If the elder's with someone suspected of exploitation, we always will separate the elder from that person. For one thing, we can't discuss banking business with someone that is not on an account with a customer. But obviously, if it's somebody that we think may be possibly exploiting them, we want to speak to the elder alone. And a lot of times we get different answers to questions than if we would ask them in front of the person. Suggest a trusted designate a trusted contact person. That's someone that we can call if we have suspicions or concerns about our customer. and then suggest to the elder that they may want to consider a power of attorney, a representative payee, a joint account, a conservatorship, guardianship, something where someone else is on the account with them that can help them look out for their finances. And our role is also to give good financial practice advice, such as asking them to review their bank statements in a timely manner, so that if there's anything that they have questions about that they don't remember doing, that they can be discovered early. Not leaving their money and valuables in plain sight. We have had this happen multiple times, where an elder will leave cash or a checkbook on a table, on a desk, and of course that's just opens the door for someone to take it. Signing their own checks rather than having someone else sign for them. Again, we look at signatures, and that's something that is a question if we notice that someone else has signed it. And I know there are occasions when an elder can't write, but for the most part, we encourage them to sign their own checks, and then don't sign a bunch of checks in the checkbook, blank checks. Again, that's an open invitation for somebody just to make it out to themselves for whatever they want. Not signing any agreement without reading it carefully, and not until a trusted friend, advisor, or attorney has reviewed it. Safeguarding their debit and credit cards and not letting others use them. We have that happen a lot, where they'll send a grandson or someone to the grocery store to pick up a few things, and then the next thing you know, there's money gone out of their account that they were not aware of. Safeguarding, again, their debit and credit cards, not giving out information, card information, or any information over the phone, not allowing anyone to put their name on an elder's account without their permission. And we tell our front line if there's any suspicions, they are to contact a supervisor at the branch, contact security, so that we can do further research into the incident. I always obtain photographs and surveillance video at the time, because it could be perfectly okay, or we could get asked for copies of video 6 months down the road from law enforcement, and our surveillance video does not record forever. So try to get surveillance video at the time in case we need it. And then if exploitation is suspected, complete an APS referral and or call law enforcement, depending on the situation. So as hard as we try, there are some things though that we can't control, that tie our hands, and it's the most frustrating part of dealing with this type of abuse. And that's when we just can't convince a customer that they're being taken advantage of or exploited. That's always hard. Some other things, an elder that thinks that their relative or friend is helping them or taking care of them. We had a customer who got a large settlement check, like $500,000 settlement check from an accident. And over the course of a year, his daughter basically took it all. She'd come in with him and he'd withdraw money and just hand it to her. She came in with a power of attorney that was drawn up right after the accident. And a while later, she opened an account of her own, got a debit card, and enrolled in online banking so that she could transfer the money into her account whenever she wanted. When asked about all the money being withdrawn, he stated that she was taking real good care of him and his wife. This exploitation went on for about a year, and law enforcement's been involved pretty much since the beginning. It is in the court's hands now. an elder that tells us one thing but tells APS and law enforcement a different story. If they tell us that they're unaware of things that are being done, that they didn't authorize a transaction, but then we file a referral or have law enforcement go out and talk to them, and they tell them that it was okay. And obviously, if they give permission, then there's not much they can do. But that is kind of a frustrating thing that happens at times also. The elder's aware of what's going on, but is unwilling to prosecute because of familiar relationships or fear of retaliation, particularly if they are the abuser. We had a customer whose daughter was a joint owner on the account with her, and was exploited her for almost a year. It was a very difficult year trying to help our customer keep her money. And in the end, she said she was not willing to prosecute. She said that that daughter was her only child, and she was the only one that could take care of her. So, and then an elder that's afraid of confrontation. They'll say things like, if they found out that I was talking to you, or if I don't give them this money, they'll be so angry. Things like that are also hard. An elder's convinced that they've won a sweepstakes. We had a customer that was convinced he had won Publishers Clearinghouse, and we even got the FBI and the postal inspectors involved in this one because he was sending tons of money. We were able to stop several checks from being delivered. Nonetheless, he lost about $80,000 before his daughter was added to his account, to an account with him, and transferred all but a small amount of money out of his sole account into their joint account so she could keep a close eye on his money. An elder that refuses to believe that the person he met online isn't real because they've spent a whole weekend together. I've heard this multiple times. They think because they've gone to dinner with somebody, they've spent a weekend together, they're constantly sending them pictures of them, pictures of their family, that this is the person that they think it is, and it's hard to convince them otherwise. An elder that gets belligerent because it's their money and we can't keep them from sending it. There is only so much we can do. In the end, it is their money. And although we try as hard as we can, sometimes we just can't convince them that it's not real. So those are some roadblocks that we deal with. Back to the Elderly and Vulnerable Adult Financial Exploitation Prevention Act. That was a law that was initiated back in 2017, giving us greater flexibility in helping our elderly customers, and it really has. It says that if an institution suspects financial exploitation, that they can refuse or delay a transaction of the elder, of an account that an elder is a beneficiary of, a trust, a guardianship, or conservatorship, or if they're on an account with a person that is suspected of perpetrating the exploitation. And also, financial institutions are immune from criminal, civil, or administrative liability for holding or refusing a transaction, or for any other actions that we take if we have a reasonable belief that there is exploitation going on. The case that I was telling you about, who was the daughter joint on her account that was exploiting her, that she didn't want to prosecute, that was the first time that we put this law into practice, holding and refusing transactions while an investigation was being done, and it was very difficult. But it is a great thing that we have that flexibility to be able to do that. In March of 2016, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau issued guidance on recommendations and reporting for financial institutions on preventing and responding to elder financial exploitation. They recommended training management and staff to prevent, detect, and respond, using technology to monitor signs of elder financial exploitation, reporting all cases of elder financial exploitation to local, state, and federal authorities, filing SARS or suspicious activity reports. These are reports that are required to be filed with the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network or FinCEN if suspicious activity is observed. And now there is a checkbox for elder financial exploitation under the suspicious activity section of the SAR form. So that has been added within the last couple of years. And then expediting documentation requests. In 2018, the CFPB offered additional guidance focusing on using resources like networking and community outreach. So how can we increase our awareness of elder financial exploitation? Through fraud software. We use a software right now that generates alerts based on specific criteria that we set, such as age, spikes in the number of cash transactions, the types of transactions, transactions over a certain dollar amount, things like that. And we are in the process now of upgrading to a new software that uses data analytics to detect this type of fraud, which is a much more proactive approach than what we currently use. So we are excited about that, having that software. It's in the process of being implemented. Community outreach. The CFPB and the FDIC came together to develop what they call Money Smart for Older Adults, which is an instructor-led training developed to teach adults and caregivers of older adults about elder financial exploitation and why they may be at risk. It's also a tool for bank community partnerships. So banks can deliver this information in collaboration with other senior services or adult protective services. It's a very good, and it's free, free training. Also, the American Bankers Association has come out with, after this, something they call a training they call Safe Banking for Seniors. It's, again, a free national program that provides bankers with the tools and resources to help older adults, their families, and caregivers prevent elder financial exploitation. And both of these come with everything that you would need to do a training: marketing strategies, presentation lessons, participant activities, promotional materials, everything. So very good resources for that. Fraud groups. I started a fraud group in the Tri-Cities about 3 years ago, and I'm a member of 2 other fraud groups in the area. And that is, we meet, we have banks, credit unions, local, state, and federal law enforcement, and other agencies that come together, and we discuss all types of fraud, but of course, elder financial exploitation is always something that comes up during our meetings. It's a good collaboration with the financial sector and law enforcement to talk about things that we see and things that they are doing to help combat, deter, and detect elder financial exploitation. Employee training. Of course, that's always a big thing that we do. We currently use something called AARP's Bank Safe, and we've been using that for several years. I actually stumbled upon that training when I was looking for options for some training for our employees. I went out to AARP's website and saw this, emailed the person in charge and told her I was interested in learning about it. She told me that it was something that they were just starting to develop, to complete an application and apply for a grant. It was a $10,000 grant that six financial institutions would be chosen to do this training. It would be to help develop, test, and implement an elder financial exploitation training for our Banks Frontline. So I had to find a grantee, someone that would be the lead grantee, because the grant had to go to a nonprofit. I spoke with Laura Brown, who was at the Tennessee Commission on Aging and Disability, and TCAD was our lead grantee. Bank of Tennessee was the lead financial partner. And Laura she did the grant, and my job was to solicit support from other financial institutions in the state of Tennessee that would agree to pilot the training and at their financial institutions and provide feedback. We submitted the grant in May of 2017. We were awarded the grant in June of 2017. And then we spent a year in meetings with the other 5 financial institutions developing the training. In May of 2018, we flew to Washington, D.C. for the pilot launch of the training. And in May 2019, it went national. It's a great tool for financial institutions, and it is absolutely free. So the last thing I wanted to cover is just some resources that are out there if you would like more information about elder fraud. Again, the AARP Fraud Watch Network has a link to scams and fraud and a free hotline for reporting suspected fraud. AARP is a big proponent of, obviously, of elder fraud. This is a screenshot of their webpage. I took this a while back. I'm sure it looks different now because they keep it pretty current with the scams that are out there. But it's a great resource. These are links that tell you how the scam is perpetrated, and also things you can do to keep from becoming a victim. Again, AARP is a really good resource. The National Center on Elder Abuse, that's the web address there, that they provide the latest information regarding research, training, best practices, news and resources on elder abuse, neglect, and exploitation to professionals and to the public. The U.S. Department of Elder Justice Initiative. The Department of Justice is committed to combating all forms of elder abuse and financial exploitation through enforcement actions, training and resources, research, victim services, and public awareness. It's also a really good website. The National Association on Area Agencies on Aging, www.n4a.org, great website. The Tennessee Commission on Aging and Disability, or TCAD. The FTC, a Federal Trade Commission. It's an agency dedicated to preventing consumer scams. It's a really good website, lots of good information out there. The U.S. Department of Justice, which is a government site with an emphasis on internet and telemarketing fraud. Another good site. The FDIC, Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, a governmental agency that regulates banks in the U.S. Good information and tips on elder fraud. The U.S. Postal Inspection Service has lots of helpful tips and links on mail fraud. A lot of good information. And you can report elder abuse in Tennessee by calling 1-888-APS-TENM or by visiting reportadultabuse.dhs.tn.gov. And that is all I have. Thank you for letting me give you this information. Hopefully it was helpful. And I guess we will take any questions.
Michele, we don't have any questions at this time, so you covered everything.
Well, it was my pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you, Michele, for all the information you provided today.
You're welcome.
Also, want to thank the Alzheimer's Tennessee for their sponsorship of this program. Our next virtual education series program will be on July the 27th. It's the second part of Lisa Smart's presentation that she made in April. It's called I Thought I Was a People Person Until I Started Working with People. She gives you some life skills, but she's funny about it. So I think you all will enjoy her if you all choose to participate. I'll send a link out a little bit later for registration. So if anybody has any questions, they can email me. And otherwise, I just thank everyone for participating in our virtual education series today, and I hope to see you all again soon. Thank you very much. Bye now.